Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Catherine Zach, and this is the 40 Portal. I'm so happy to be here. I have to tell you, this podcast is genuinely a delight. It is a delight to create. It is a delight to sit with these women that I'm so lucky to interview and share their stories and hear their stories and share them with you. It is a delight to listen to the episodes myself. It's a delight to know that you're listening to them. And when you send me your feedback, your comments on the episode, it means everything. It means everything because it's doing the thing that I hoped it would do, which is that these stories about being a woman in midlife and what that means and what it feels like and what we're grappling with, like by each of us sharing our own very different stories, we would begin to uncover a commonality that like no one has it figured out. We're all in a beautiful process of becoming, and none of us is in this alone, even if our stories look really different. So on that note, I am going to ask you to do 3 very specific things if you've been listening along to the podcast and you're enjoying it. Number 1, will you subscribe or follow or whatever it is when you make sure you don't miss an episode wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure that you're subscribing to the 40 Portal or following along so you don't miss an episode. Number 2, can you leave us a 5-star review? These have so much impact and they really help grow the podcast. And while you're doing that, number 3, will you leave us a little love note, a little handwritten review? It doesn't have to be long, but I'd love to know what brought you to the podcast. Why are you listening? What are you hoping to hear? What is a little nugget or piece of inspiration or wisdom that you gleaned from an episode? Will you tell me about it? Because that will help me continue to bring you stories that really mean something to you and make a difference in your life. And it will help other women find the podcast. Thank you so much for doing that. It supports this whole project in so many ways. And, this project, this is episode 7, and I started filming these, recording these episodes back in January after birthing the idea for this podcast 9 months ago. There you go. That's the timeline. Last July when I turned 40. So it's been like a whole process. And it's only now 7 episodes in that I can see that this podcast, and this was my thought the whole time, it is showing me, it is showing us all what it is as it unfolds, which actually feels a lot like life. And there's something pretty amazing about this because I think we can be so conditioned into thinking we have to have everything figured out before we begin. We have to have this level of polished perfection that exists on the internet but doesn't exist in real life. All these things, there's so much pressure. They keep us small. They keep us contained. They keep us from not just going for it. And I'm just so happy that I somehow was able to trust that this podcast would become the thing it was supposed to become, even though truly I had no idea how this was going to shake out when I first had the idea. I even had no idea back in January what stories were going to emerge. So I guess I would say it's really cool that it's unfolding in this way. And maybe that gives you a little spark of something too. If there's some project or creative act in your life that feels like, oh my God, I could never, because I have no idea what that would become. Or if I'm not going to do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. Just allow yourself the shitty first draft. Allow whatever is bubbling up inside of you to become the thing that it's meant to become. And I think if we can trust that, yeah, it'll happen. It'll reveal itself in time. And there's something so beautiful and so human about that. So I'm going to leave you with that. Okay. So one of the things that whole process is showing me is that even though the stories of these women on the podcast are different, there's so much connection across what we're talking about. And so if you listen to last week's episode, and if you didn't, press pause, go back, listen to Alison's episode. Alison so honestly and so vulnerably shared about her experience of being childless by circumstance. Those are her words. That's how she describes it. She's 44 years old. She's about to be 45, and she's childless by circumstance. And she talks in the episode about, her grief around that, and like the life that she has not being the life that maybe she had planned for herself. And I know that like so many of us listening today, myself included, could find the exact thing in our life that went like that. Like, thought it was going to go that way, and it actually went very differently. There's so much power in just being able to like own that truth and process that truth. And her story is one that we don't get to hear a lot. And so it felt really awesome to get to share it here on the 40 Portal podcast. Like, I want more of those stories that are not being heard all the time or not being told all the time. And today's episode is such a beautiful follow-up to Alison's about being childless by circumstance, because in Francesca's episode, it's definitely not the same story. It's a very different story, but the through line is that whether you became a mother or you didn't, whether it was a choice or it wasn't, whether you're in the thick of it right now, as Francesca is, as I am, or you're watching it from the outside, motherhood is totally a 40 Portal thing. It is such a midlife reckoning. The decision, the identity, the loss, the transformation, the question of who you are now and who you are becoming and who you thought you would be, it all belongs here. So today I am talking to the stunning Inside It Out, Francesca Choy-Kee Damico. She is 41. She is a former Broadway actor turned interior design expert. And you'll hear it in her words. She's working on something in this next phase of her career post having a child that is just beginning to emerge. And I love that Francesca can so beautifully and vulnerably own like the grace of that beginning, of that not knowing, which is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of this intro. Even more symmetry. So Francesca is a mom to a 3-year-old little cute kid. She moved to the Hudson Valley a few years ago, just like I did during the pandemic. And she's spent the last few years becoming a mother, moving to a new place, changing careers again, reorienting so much about who she is and her identity. And these are big questions. And she is holding them with so much tenderness, so much care, and like almost a savoring quality of these questions that really matter. And it's so inspiring to me. Our conversation was deeply moving to have, and I hope it will be deeply moving for you to listen to too. What else do we talk about? The radical act of staying in discomfort. what the process of labor and delivery can actually teach us about being alive, and the ancestral weight of women who came before us who didn't get to tend to themselves in the way that many of us are getting to tend to ourselves in this moment in time. What else? Oh, the big revelation, the big confirmation. It's funny too. This is another callback. We talked about this in episode, I think it was episode 2, Clara's episode, the idea that there's no there, which feels like fucking freedom in my 40s. It really does. Okay. Just come on in, make yourself at home, pull up a chair, grab your drink of choice, and listen along to this tender, beautiful, and very moving conversation with Francesca. So we live in a really small place, like community. And I just remember seeing you before I think we actually met. And it would be out walking, like as we do. And it was at a time that was closer to pandemic times, where there was just this kind of natural isolation. Obviously, I was new to this area. I had a young, like, baby at that time. And I just remember seeing you and feeling like, oh, I don't know you. I feel that we are going through something similar as we walk alone or with our child, like in this moment in time.
Opposite sides of the street. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't remember the first time we talked, but it might have been at the studio when you and your child came to the Mama and Me class that I put on. And when we finally did get to talk, like I just remember you saying some things that really hit home for me, like the things that I was and continue to think about. But you said it so beautifully. And it's namely this intersection of identity and motherhood and work and self. How to have leaders. Yeah. And so I don't know, I just felt so grateful to meet you and to be connected in that way and to actually then be able to have these conversations about that topic.
Same. And it felt a little bit like, when you just, I don't know, you can cut, there's a signal, like a bat signal that goes up and you're like, yeah, she's my people. I don't know. I feel like she's one of the tribe. And I feel like when we were going through that particular time, this was in like 2022, which is when we moved up here and we had just had our son in November. When you're reorienting yourself to new community, to new space, to a new home, you're moving through multiple rapid transitions all at the same time. It can feel really hard to read those signals, to kind of like be able to scan for your people and to find those lifelines. And and your studio definitely felt like a lifeboat at a time when our family was in the nascent stages of like building community here. So I feel this. Yeah.
And then also I appreciate the reality of the fact that like we actually, I mean, I think the last time we saw each other and sat down was like August, and now it's February. And it's like, because life is busy.
Yeah.
It's full. And I think too, like, and maybe this is special to like female friendship, but maybe not, that like you can kind of pick up where you last left off and not hold it against, like, I mean, the way that I see it is like I try to give everyone, especially women and moms in my life, I'm like, I think we all just need a wide turning radius. Like, just so it's like if it's weeks or months without like connecting, it's kind of like, oh, because we're just all we're trying to make a lot of turns at once here.
It's so funny when I plan dates with other moms or play dates with other families, we won't say like, okay, everyone's arriving at 3. We'll say everyone's arriving within a window of 3 and 4, whatever it is. I feel like we all need windows of grace around us during this season of life. It's just a little bit more forgiving.
Do you feel like that has come with this evolution of where you are in your life? Or is that something that you've always been like practicing, the ability to like give and receive grace?
Oh, no, I think it's very specific to this season. I think that motherhood is slowly dismantling and rewiring all of the intense perfectionism I have kind of held around how I'm being perceived by other people. If I'm late, it means this about me and this about me, and then they're going to see me this way. That the mantle of trying to maintain a persona or play multiple roles has just become so it's exhausting. And so I'm finding that inside of that fatigue is actually just a like, okay, well, this is just me and I'm late.
Mm-hmm. And I was actually late today.
Or, apologies, like a shower did not happen the last few days. And this is where we are. And it doesn't mean anything about me or anything about like it means that there is spaciousness around like showing up as I am and that kind of being enough. And it can feel very confronting at times. But it also feels like I'm moving in that things are moving and that's the direction we want to be moving. Generally.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh my gosh, totally. So I know who I'm talking to, but I'd love for our listeners who are now like, ooh, who's this woman talking about Grace? I love that. Will you tell us your name and your pronouns and tell us if is there a story about your name? How does your name and your identity in this moment, like, what do they share? Tell us more.
My name is Francesca Choy-Kee Damico. Damico is my married last name. And my name carries, as you could probably intuit, many different stories. My heritage, my lineage is multicultural and from all over the place. I'm 1/8 Chinese on my dad's side. I'm a first generation Guyanese immigrant on my mom's side, second generation on my dad's side. My mom's side of the family, they were part of the Windrush generation. So their family left Guyana in the late 1940s, 50s, and went to England. So I have, like, weirdly, England is a huge part of my identity too. I have dual citizenship there. I was named after Francesca Annis, who was my mother's favorite actress at the time, and my grandfather, Frank. So many people will call me Frankie, which has a very personal resonance for that reason. And I used to be an actor, and I remember sometimes seeing casting directors and, of course they've got your headshot, but, I could see that they would be kind of like rather surprised, like Francesca is like a very Italian name. And Choy-Kee is, well, clearly not Italian. And so often I would get asked, so tell me about where you come from. And so it's something I'm really proud of. I really feel in many ways like my heritage kind of names my citizenship as like a world citizen and belonging in many places and being from many places. So that's my name.
Is your married name, is that Italian or?
It is. I married.
That's funny.
That woman who's half Sicilian. Francesca Damico. It just sounds like I should have my own tomato sauce.
Maybe you will. Maybe that's coming.
I'm open to it.
That's good. Okay, so you started sharing a little bit more about your background and named the fact that you were an actor. But I'm wondering, how would you introduce yourself, like, before your labels or your job title or things that appear on your resume? Like, what would you say about yourself without those life on paper things?
Yes. Well, I'm gonna say this at the risk of sounding really erudite and out there. Right. But I'm an extension of the universe's creativity. I'm here in this body for a little while. As a spark of like creative loving energy. That's me. I really feel so drawn to beauty and creating a sense of belonging for other people. I feel drawn to creating a sense of connectivity through story and empathy. I think those things are essential parts of me that I mean, since I was little, I think have kind of been a through line, a thread for me. So before labels, before jobs, before over identifying with like what I do for a living, I would say that those are the essential kind of tenets of who I am kind of at the core.
You made me tear up when you said that. And it was, I mean, so beautiful the way you said that. And then also I was like, oh my God, I'm such an asshole for picking that fight with my husband last night on our date, right? Like, wow. Like, I don't know. Like, it was just like the tension between this knowing that like how precious this blip of an experience is to be in this body, to be in this life, that we come from or feel part of something so much greater. And yet, like, we're here just doing our human things, like grappling with this self and this ego and these petty but still beautiful parts of like being a messy human too.
Yeah. I feel like interestingly, motherhood has really brought that into relief for me, like very intensely, which is the heightened sense of like, this is a singular time. It's never going to come again. Like, look at how the light is hitting his eyelashes and his cheek. And he's 3. And when will he ever be 3 again? And I'm so goddamn tired. And like, I have had nothing but cheddar bunnies for like every single meal. But like, I'm weirdly not hungry and I really should drink water. And, you know, oh my God, look at how thin I used to be in 2013. Like, that's insane. Like, this is the polarity at which we live. And so, I don't know. I mean, it is this sort of, yeah, very, very intense kind of self-awareness of like, it's all moving very quickly and here's the preciousness of where we are. And here are the trappings of what it is to be in the day-to-day, the day-to-day strain, honestly, sometimes of like caregiving and homekeeping and partnership tending. And it's a workout.
It's a workout. Yeah. Totally. And I'm going to stick with that metaphor because, you know, you do get a muscle memory for certain bits of it. And like you can feel and see your capacity grow over time. But I find that it's not super sexy or like obvious to anyone else. Like once in a while, I'll be like, oh, wow, I handled that differently than I would have 5 years ago or 2 months ago or something. But it's so little, it's so subtle. It's like no one else might notice that but me. But I do have those moments where I'm like, yeah, I can see that my capacity has really changed, that my muscle memory for that workout is like, it's increasing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny that like your capacity to carry that load, like you meet the moment and then the load shifts and it's like, oh, we're in a higher resistance. Like, so, you know, there's the kiddos going through a developmental leap, or we're in a time where we have now aging parents and like weirdly, you know, mortgages and navigating school administrators. And I mean, that each new, it's so weird, but I felt this way about like childbirth too, which is you move through the intensity of labor and it feels like you've kind of moved over a mountain, but actually you're just moving up you're at the base of the hill. Like it's you're being initiated, right? Like that's kind of what it is. And so within all of these little like milestones of like parenting and all of the things that we're moving through in this kind of chapter of our lives, it feels like there are all of these tiny portals that are weirdly kind of preparing you to carry the load of the next moment.
Mm,
Do you know what I
yes.
mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I felt that way particularly about pregnancy too, where it's like each trimester, each section of it, like kind of prepared you for the next. I do feel that a lot. I'm like, wow, what a miraculous design, right? Like even when towards the end of like your pregnancy, like are waking up in the middle of the night a million times and you can't sleep and you're getting up and it's like, oh, well, there it is, because that's about to become your reality for the next however long it lasts.
Yes. Yeah, you're like divine biological weight training.
Yeah, that's right. It's a workout. So good. Well, do you want to add back in any titles or stuff on paper about you? Like you've mentioned the art mom, that were an actor. Like, is there anything else that you want to put into the mix of people getting to know you in this conversation?
Yes. It's so interesting, the concept of like being known and like what we share and what we omit. I have developed like a weird sensitivity around like how I name myself and like in terms of identity and like what I do, especially since making the decision to stay home with my son. And moving through the kind of complex, weird feelings of just like, what does productivity mean now? What does success mean now? If I'm, that like that weirdly it's not enough, that I'm pouring all of my energy into helping to nurture our family and like grow this little human, that I somehow have to be Beyonce. So I would say that I used to be a professional storyteller. It was something I knew I wanted to do since I was really little. I identified with that part of myself so strongly. It was who I am, who I was. I went to school for it. I worked in the city. I was on Broadway. I did regional shows. I did a really beautiful Broadway tour. And inside of that were the whisperings of transition, were the whisperings of like, this is not enough. The business is not a fit. And then I really felt like, in some ways, I was having a toxic relationship to the profession of an art form that I loved, that was a part of me. And so there was a lot of grief, honestly. I mean, like intense grief, and I still feel it around letting go of acting as a career and allowing the other kind of whispers of like design and connectivity and events and building spaces for people to kind of gather and come together, kind of come to the forefront. So in 2017, I shifted into weddings and event sales. And I was working at this little place in Chelsea, and that lasted 2 years. And then the pandemic happened and everything shut down. The venue shut down. Weddings went away. Theater went away. And that was not unlike this chapter of motherhood, another period of intense cocooning and inward looking and being in this weird chrysalis, this ooey gooey kind of amorphous state of like not knowing what I'm doing, who I am, what I'm supposed to be offering to people. And then I kind of just followed the thread of like wanting to bring beauty into people's lives in some way. And with my like previous experience with sales and customer experience and working with people and loving people, that I found myself at Workstead, which is a like renowned, beautiful interior design studio. And I worked on the products team there for 2 years before having Atlas, my son, and then moving into another period of like deep cocooning and transformation. Sounds so trite, but you know, I mean, like deep transition and change. And so I've been living into my mothering role, which is another role, another part of what I do that I take tremendous pride in and love my kiddo. And I'm also, I can feel, again, those whispers of just like, okay, it's time to start opening up the heart a little bit wider and to let some other things up and out that have been gestating. I mean, it honestly, and I know I just kind of like keep coming back to like the birth, death, life cycle thing, but it really does just, it just feels like that all the time. Like we're birthing and things are falling away, and then we're gestating something, it comes up and out and it lives for a bit and then morphs into something else and falls away. And like, it's deeply uncomfortable, but that I would say is my long form resume. Like it's you know, I grapple with sometimes knowing how to answer it, but that's how I would share a more holistic overview of like what I do, who I am.
I mean, same girl, same. Like, oh gosh, I'm like, yes, I'm just at the church of Francesca. Like that is, it's so how I have felt. And as you're talking, I'm like thinking of all these little threads I want to pull. One is that like we talked about mini portals, like a little bit earlier in our conversation, like daily portals, but also like, and maybe you're in several portals at once, but I will say like the decade of my 30s felt like one long hallway, like truly one long hallway. And every time I was like, oh, I think I'm out of it. I think I'm in the next room or whatever. The timeline kept changing. And for me, like to kind of, my version of that was like, I became a mom. I was 31, almost 32. Like I turned 32 5 days after my first child was born. And then he was 2 3/4. And so that was like this discontinuity with like my relationship to what my identity was in the world, like exactly what you named of being like, I'm so productive. I am literally making a human and like taking care and feeding him from my body, all these things, but that's not enough. Right. And then also knowing too, that I really deeply wanted to get back into my work. And as I was starting to re-find my footing there, the pandemic hit. Lou was like 2 3/4. And like we were in a different industry, but you know, the wellness industry that was my 90% of my work, 95% of my work was in person pre-March 2020, and everything was shut down. And so that was another discontinuity where it was like, we ended up moving up here, but a complete, like, I'm like, oh, the portal just like the hallway just got longer. Okay. And then the day that my kid got into daycare again, like he was home with me after having been in daycare for about 1.5 years. He was back home with me for 9 months. And like the day he started full-time daycare was like the day I got pregnant with my second child. And so it's like, okay, the hallway stretches. And meanwhile, I'm just trying to find my footing with like this, what is my work in the world? How do I do, what is my relationship to being able to contribute financially to my family? And I'm always working, but it's not out in the world. And then opening the studio, which was almost 3 years ago now, that's like where I finally felt like I was edging to the end of the hallway, and then I turned 40. And it's just like, that was one long portal. And I think what I want to say too, that maybe feels like, take this out and you can apply it to different circumstances, is that there is this sense of like, are we there yet?
Yes.
And wanting to be on the other side. And then it's like, no, we're not.
Yes. Oh, yes. Are we there yet? Yeah, I have never felt that so acutely as I do now. And I think part of that, I love that you said that, because I think part of that question is also like, there's a part of me that is here, but is also unseated. Like, is trying to somehow move to the next 6 months, or sit inside of the next year or the next 2 years to project forward and try to kind of glean, are the things I'm thinking about right now going to somehow be successful? Is it always going to feel like this? But there is the discomfort that, honestly, sometimes the internal struggle that I'm feeling around motherhood and wanting to self-actualize my own personal capacity to do. I mean, I think that's the challenge of being human, right? Like, there's always going to be this intense longing to do more, to expand, right? I think expansion is a part of that's just our human birthright. Like, we arrive here and the whole thing is just like physical and spiritual expansion until we just are not here anymore. It's the whole longing. And what I'm realizing, or what it's feeling like, and I don't know if this resonates with you, is that there is no there. Do you know what I mean? There's no there.
It's so funny that that exact phrase, like, I have used and had in conversation with other women in my life, like, and we're just like, oh, there's no there. And I know that, and then I forget it, and then I struggle, and then I remember it, and then I forget it. It's like one of these things that I feel like I am in this cycle of constantly unlearning and relearning.
Yes, same. It feels like an exercise in staying. Like, staying in the murkiness, and staying in the discomfort, and staying in the, like, intense push and pull of, nursing your baby, and wanting bodily autonomy, and doing all of the being on one long car nap drive, and desperately wanting to stop and take a nap. And that there are just these intense polarities that I feel like exist inside of this particular journey, and the discomfort of which makes you want to jump out of it. But it also just feels like this, I don't know, exercise in staying. But yeah.
Do you feel like you learned something about that in the experience of your labor or pregnancy or giving was there anything there that like taught you something about that, or doesn't feel connected about learning to stay?
Yeah, I think so. I think that resonates. Every birth experience is so unique, and yet it's universal. All operating people move through that transit together and apart, like death or like being born. Like we've all will go through those experiences, but or have been through. But it's all very unique to us. And I think that in my labor and delivery journey, I found a lot of strength inside of staying. I think it taught me how to tend to an inner space, like when even my body felt like an external space that was uncomfortable, right? I mean, like I don't really know how to explain this, but it felt like there were many rooms in my labor. Like there's this external space that's, in my case was being held by my family and my partner and my doula, and we're in this birth womb space. Then there's my body, which felt like I really enjoyed my pregnancy. And I was extremely lucky that in many ways it felt easeful pretty much all the way through. Labor and delivery challenged my ability to stay in my body because that container was so, it was just cracking open. And so I discovered another room. I don't really know how else to describe it, but there was another antechamber somewhere inside of myself that was not connected to my body, but was connected to my body, but was also connected to some other kind of like liminal space or liminal part of myself that allowed me to anchor in and stay with inside of that process. And that was a new discovery. I think it's kind of been following me through this motherhood journey. And it's also something that I think that I fight too. But I think so. I think staying was discovered inside of that space for sure.
I love how you're like, there's another room. And when I was in labor with my first child, it was the longer of my two labors, which is like kind of probably typical. But I remember at one point I was like, oh, I have to go down to get him. And then I remember going down and I was like, you're coming with me. And then like, but I don't know where down, I don't know where down is. I just know I went down, like it's like the basement or something. Yeah. Will you tell us how old you are and how old do you feel?
I'm 41. I feel 13. That is just right around the 12, 13 mark. And that I think will not change. It feels like, there's just this very tender, I don't know, adolescent inner child in there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep us time traveling because one of my questions is, what is one thing that your 10 years ago self would be surprised to learn about you today?
I mean, there are so many things to say. I think that I had really intense aspirations for myself when I was I had just had my Broadway debut. I had just gotten married. There were, in some ways, I was moving through a very intense transit of change, not unlike the one that I feel like I'm passing through now. But I think that I would be surprised that I'm not working in a traditional framework of like what work is. I think I think that my 31-year-old self would kind of like take my 41-year-old self to task a little bit on that. I also think that that she would probably also be surprised by the depth and complexity that I kind of carry as an individual now. I think she would be in many ways, I don't think proud is the right word, but I think that she would be not in awe. I don't know what the right word is, like, but I think there would be a real recognition and understanding of like that everything that I'm kind of moving toward is actually in service of unraveling perhaps a disordered relationship to work identity and who I am. And I think she would be surprised to see me as a woman and not a girl. You know, I think that there has been something inside of this 10-year shift that has matured certain aspects of who I am internally. So I think I don't know if I'm answering the question properly, but I think that is something she'd be surprised by. Less by the external trappings of just what I think she would have imagined success and rival means, and that there's been more of an like a big internal shift that would probably be surprising to her around.
I think maybe she would be in awe of you. Okay, what is one narrative, one script that you were given about being a woman at 41 or in her 40s or 40? And like, how does that actually map onto your life? Or is there a script that you were given about a woman at 41 in her 40s?
This is sort of a tricky one. I don't feel like I was ever given an explicit script, but I think that there are so many scripts that we're given as women. I mean, from the time we get here, from the moment we take our first breath, about how to be in the world, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and how to project ourselves to be liked, to be valued, to be considered beautiful, to be considered a wife and a partner, to be considered material for, I don't know, for other people's consumption and benefit. There are so many scripts. There's so many internalized things that it is actually really hard to kind of parse through what's mine and like what is part of the container that we're all in. But I would definitely say that I think the big one that I'm grappling with now is that it's around this sort of like foundational I don't want to say it's around this foundational piece of tending to oneself that I'm going to talk about my mother who is incredible. Sorry. It's hard not to talk about like motherhood and mothering without also thinking about your own mother and your own lineage of mothers and your grandmother and her grandmother and her grandmother. And, you know, coming from an immigrant family and coming from a family of extremely dignified people, I think that it's been really challenging. And I feel like there's a lot of ancestral knot untying that I'm like trying to do around this, around rest, around resourcing, around asking for help, around not ignoring your own body, not ignoring your own pain. That there's nothing virtuous in pushing past your point of resistance. That there's a lot of entangling that I think I'm doing around that. You know, my mother she worked at the UN for decades. She was the primary breadwinner in our household. And I think we grew up in an intergenerational family. So I grew up with my grandparents. My dad was a computer programmer and an inventor at heart, like loved Nikola Tesla and like Albert Einstein. And they talked about unseen worlds and what happens when you die. And that was my dad. But my mom really was the emotional center of our family and kind of carried this very heavy burden of moving us forward, keeping us all housed and healthy and together. And, you know, and I think that it was really challenging for her to understand how to tend to her body and her mind and her emotions in the midst of that. I think when you're in survival mode, it's hard to know how to do that. So yes, all of the best things about me, many of the wonderful things about me, I think I carry with me from in part from my mom. And I also feel that I've inherited, not just from my mom, but I think from a long maternal lineage line of pushing and compartmentalizing personal need, and that I'm really struggling with. I'm really struggling with it right now, quite a bit. I think part of that script is that as long as everyone is tended to, then I'm happy. As everyone else's needs are being met, and everyone's healthy and okay, and has then that is somehow gonna like refill my own cup. It's not true. I've discovered. So
spoiler alert, it does not work that way. Oh, thank you for sharing all of that. It was so beautiful to receive. And I know that it's not just me who's listening, who's like, yes, thanks for saying that. Me too. I feel that. Like that was a gift. That was a really, really special gift, that answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
What is your favorite thing to talk about getting older?
Oh
remember so many crazy things about getting older. The funny thing about getting older is that you kind of you care less and less about, like if it's weird. And like I'm here, I got my candles lit, I've got my tarot card deck. I'm just gonna like be in the weirdness that is me. And I'm kind of enjoying making space for those parts of myself that just, like the parts of myself that I would get together with my friends when I was, again, 12, 13, and we would like take turns meeting up at each other's houses. We'd all order in pizza and like try to read each other's minds. Like, what color are you thinking of? Really? Rewatch The Craft.
Green.
14 times.
Green.
Oh, that from you. Yeah. But
I love The Craft. I love The Craft. Yes.
I'm just saying that there's this part of me that is just wants to just be who I am. Like, it's just really layer by layer, I think, wanting more and more of that airtime. And all of the time that, we spent kind of like shoving something over here, shoving something down here, making something palatable for other people. I'm just like, no, I don't know. I'm interested in talking about what bringing those things up from the lower level, as you were saying, like, and leading with that and not feeling like that is going to somehow, that's not going to ostracize me or push people away, but instead it will slowly kind of carve out more of a space of belonging for myself and more of a space where I can fully kind of live into my own authenticity. I'm discovering that authenticity now, I think, more and more. It's just a slow kind of like chipping away, but I want to talk about the weirdness. I want to talk about portals, and I want to talk about transitions, and I want to talk about end of life and death, and I want to talk about unseen worlds and, like energy and the whole what we're held by in that's the invisible netting that we're all held by. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about beauty, and I want to talk about how it can be healing and how we can kind of create internal spaces and external spaces that can really kind of administer to the ooey gooey chrysalis forming part of where many of us in our human kind of like experience honestly are 90% of the time. I want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I, on the one hand, externally, like I'll be doing these things like why am I having this podcast where I'm sitting down and talking to 40 women about turning 40? Like, how does that map onto the paper, right? But if I go below, beneath, beyond the life on paper, I'm like, very similarly, I'm like, oh, I've always been this way. I've always been sitting and thinking and reading and writing about big questions, about being here and what that means, and wanting to connect through conversation around those things. And I've always been deeply interested in the experience of being a woman and navigating that to like what I studied in college to, and then like that gets put on the back burner. And then, I think in the last 12 years of this iteration of my work life, which like I don't even know what it's called. I have been gathering women in different ways to sit with themselves and to sit with each other. And so when I pull all those threads together, I'm like, that tapestry is like, oh, it's always been there. Of course, this makes sense, you know? And there's a returning part of it too, for sure. So I just, yeah, I feel a deep resonance with that too. Yeah. The final part of our conversation is I pick out a piece of writing from my 40 Portal book, which is, oh, you know what else I wanted to say before I go on? I thought you would like this because you're an actor. Like what you said, like, I just want to be my weird self. Like the phrase that came to me on the night that I brought this journal to my party was, this feels really weird to ask people to do like a self-reflection project at my birthday. Like that feels really strange. But I'm like, well, that's just, of course, that's who I am. That's what I do. And so I just said to myself, like, commit to the bit of being yourself. And because it's like, if you don't commit to the bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I really love that. I think, and I do think that there's something about leaping first, right? Like, I think that we have a really refined sense of like, oh, think about it first. Where's it going to lead you? If you make this choice, where's it going to go? What do people think? I mean, but I do think that there is just, and this is why I'm interested in kind of practicing at 41, which is just like, leap, take the jump, right? Take the jump first. The self-knowledge, the understanding, the clarity, the knowing what to do next, the will this succeed or not, the like all of that stuff. Oh God, I just want to know it all before I jump. But there's no way to know it all before you jump. Like, there's just no way. And I've grappled with it for 40 years, trying to find a workaround. And there is none.
Yeah. Dang.
So yeah. I really.
Well, okay. So in this, my prompt was twofold, and I still need your submission in here. But if I asked the people under 40, like, what was one question that they were living? What is like a longing, a fear, a desire, something they wanted to put into the portal to like see if they could get some reflections back. And then for the women who are over 40, I was like, what do you know? What have you learned? What have you earned? What have you burned? Like, tell us. Like, I just want to hear what you found. And so this submission is from someone who's over 40. And I'm just going to read it to you. And it's just like, whatever that brings up for you is what you can respond to. So she wrote, I find that in my 40s, I feel like I have fully settled into my bones. My joints are another story. But there is a seat that I feel myself start from that needs no external input, validation, or advice for me to find it. I think it is certainly about who I am and a good amount of grace for my flaws and complications. It is what it is, and I am who I am, and that leaves so much room for growth and curiosity. Nothing is easier or more perfect than it was. It's life, but that's fine. It feels really settled. Ask me again in 5 more years, ... Ha. Also, get witchy.
Yes. Well, the get witchy part, I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that reflection. It's so interesting. I do not feel settled. I feel like there's a certain degree, yes, of self-confidence and self-knowledge that I have that has been deeply earned inside of what I've had to move through personally. I feel like the level of maturity, she mentioned grace and level of maturity and grace that I'm able to give myself and give to, like, my son and my husband when we're moving through, sticky places, is I have never, I think I have the greatest capacity now than I ever have had for being able to hold that. I look at what is in my life right now, and I don't think that I would have had the nervous system capacity to hold it at 30. I can hold that now, and that feels like a very physical confirmation of my internal growth, being able to see what I'm holding here now. I don't feel settled. And I'm curious about that, and I'm interested in that because I feel like there's a part of me that is just kind of like waking up and is kind of coming online. I spend a lot of my time beautifully telling other people's stories, getting behind a collaborative vision and executing it as a meaningful cog in a greater kind of wheel of a play or reading or a design concept, or, I think I'm finally coming into a space where it's me. It's my name. It's my passion. It's what I feel. It's what I want to share, that is on the line. And there's no mask and there's no role. It's just me. And it feels like at 41, I'm in some ways taking a very timid but firm stake that what I, Francesca, have to bring to the table is important and singular, and that my voice matters, and that it can take up space, and that it is just as important to support as it is to light my own pilot light and emanate and share and give what I have, And so I don't feel that sense of feeling settled in my bones, or like I actually feel quite a bit of agitation. And in some ways like urgency around that piece for me.
When I am teaching prenatal yoga, like I remember I used to say, like, we would do this exercise, this like keep up exercise, it's called. And it comes from Kundalini yoga. And it's like, you're just doing these like repetition movements that are really intense, like with your arm, and you're doing it for 3 minutes, and you're breathing and you're moving, and it's really hard. And it tests your ability to stay. And I remember I used to say, like, you can do it. Like I would give whatever, and I'd be doing it with the women, and it's, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And then after a couple of years of saying that, I was like, maybe months, I don't know. At some point I was like, no, it's not that you can do it. You are already doing it. And as you were talking, that's all I kept thinking. You're already doing it.
I think, I just look at the time we have here. Like we're in our 40s. It's hard to comprehend because I feel like that picture of you that you shared being 9, weren't we just there? Weren't we just that? There you are. Yes, we were just there. So I'm not under any, like, I feel I lost my dad when I was 23 at a time when you're kind of like in that pivotal shift in like between childhood and adulthood to become that aware of your own mortality and like how quickly things can shift and change. I'm just really not under any illusion that this is going to last forever. And so you observing really beautifully, but it's something I'm already doing. It feels really wonderful to hear. And I think it's challenging because there's so much I want, so much more I want to do. And so in a weird way, I feel like 40 is the beginning, right? Like you spend your first 40 years, think of it, in your first 40 years, you've just arrived. You're here, you're a baby, you're learning how to do all of the essential things. You're interacting with your world. You're moving through your adolescence, your teenage years, your early working years, and formal like identity sort of coming of age in your 20s. You have your Saturn return. You're in your 30s. You're building a life. You're maybe meeting a partner. You're exploring your working identity. Maybe you're stepping into motherhood for the first time. Like, how much can you know? How much? It's all a discovery process. It remains a discovery process, but I don't feel like you're actually able to apply it until you broach that 40, 45, like in that, somewhere in that is like, okay, I've gone through the spiral. Like I've spiraled around this season of life now, a few quarter turns, and I'm back. And now I feel like, ooh, I can shift this small thing, and I can shift this small thing, and shift this small thing. And so it feels like for me, I'm just getting started with being able to kind of like use the tools I have to sculpt the vision, you know, the longer term vision, the legacy vision, the big things that I kind of like want to share and do. And I think it's really hard to know how to interface with the doing until you have the foundation and the skills and the experience. So anyway, for anyone who's listening that feels behind or feels like you missed the boat or the door closed, like, you know, because I feel that. I felt that so many times, you know? Sorry. I felt that so many times inside of this transit of life that, like, it's all over. Like, there's no way that I can, you know, move from the intensity of caregiving into expanding enough to, like, you know, do these other things, because it just feels so absorbing and so deeply intense and requires so much of you. But I just want to say you're not late. We're not late. We're right on time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. You're a gift. You're a gift. You're right on time. And I would say, yeah, we're just getting started. I feel that so deeply.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. How about that conversation? So many little nuggets of wisdom. We're not late. we're right on time. I mean, come on. And I know this is common for many of us. It certainly is something that I'm grappling with. This feeling of always being behind, whether it's in our career or our relationships or in becoming like who we thought we'd be by now. Like, hold that sentence, hold that idea, hold that tension, write it somewhere, hang it on your mirror. We're not late. What if we're not late? What if we are right on time? Just mind-blowing. So beautiful. Okay. If this episode moved you, like I said at the top, please leave a 5-star review, leave a couple lines that like really resonated with you. And please, please, please share it with one woman in your life who needs to hear that message too, or any message in this beautiful conversation, because that is how the podcast grows, not through algorithms, but by us passing things along that are real and meaningful to each other. So thank you so much for doing that. One last thing before we go, I am hosting a small intentional retreat this June, the 17th through the 19th in the Hudson Valley, right here where I live, where this show is made, where a lot of the women that I'm interviewing on the podcast actually live. And it is designed for those of us who are ready to stop circling the questions and actually spend some time sitting with them and sitting with them together, even if it means sitting in the discomfort. We're also going to have a lot of fun. The details, I'll link to them in the show notes. I have like 3 spots left at this point, and I'd love for one of them to be yours if this invitation is resonating. Okay, that's it for now. I'll see you right back here next week. Thank you so much for listening to the 40 Portal. It means more than you